All right then, man. We are on air.
Ta-da!
What's going on,
Without
guys?
too much of a
Welcome to another.
problem.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Breaking the Baits, episode 44, I believe. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the best and worst video game adapted movies.
Ta-da! And there's a lot of them, all 41 of them.
Mm-hmm. Some good,
Actually,
some bad.
Yeah, some really bad.
Some good, most bad.
Can't be all that bad.
I'm sorry that I have not seen that Assassin's Creed movie yet.
I have not either.
But I heard it was terrible.
Terrible like in the Mario Brothers movie, or terrible like in the second part of Mortal Kombat.
I'm leaning towards the second part of Mortal Kombat, possibly, somewhere probably in between. I was like, really?
It kind of looked good. I never really got into the Assassin's Creed, so I actually kind of had to, I have it for my Xbox. It came with the Xbox, but never really played it. And then I'm like, what is it all about? What could this movie be that might actually interest me? And actually, it is an interesting backstory.
Yeah, it is a pretty
and I definitely could see them, tailoring a very good movie to it, and the storyline is pretty solid. It's just how you convert that video game. It's like reading a book. You look at the book, and the book is always going to be so much better because you have to imagine it. And then you take that book and you have to take all that information and slam it into, an hour and 30 minutes at most, maybe 2 hours if you're really pushing it. And, sometimes it doesn't translate well at all. Very badly.
A lot of times it don't. Unfortunately.
A good example for me was a disappointment. I love playing Doom. I love Doom.
In the movie, yeah.
And then the movie come out and it was like, what? The best part of that movie was the end. Not the complete end of the movie, like the last, I think it's like 5 minutes of it, where they actually showed the first person perspective in live action play.
That was the best. Yeah, that was
like
the best.
The cream of the movie. I mean, that was that was it. Everything else was like, some of the creatures look okay, compared to the game. I mean, I think the game's artwork was a lot better, personally. But
I think it was like, this is what I feel like. And I'm not one of those types of guys that be like, oh, it's got to be perfect. It felt like they came up with an idea they came up with that movie idea, and then somebody just said, why don't you put Doom on it?
Yeah.
I mean, because the movie had an interesting premise.
Like, the storyline of Doom is great. It is awesome. I played Doom 1, Doom 2, Heretic, Quake, and all those games. I played all of them for years, and the storyline was freaking awesome. But the translation, some of the visuals were pretty cool. You know, the arc and everything, going from Earth to Mars, was okay. But from that point, though, I think they tried to throw too much of it in there and didn't put enough time into it. And then you kind of start using, you had some good actors. You had The Rock,
Dwayne Johnson, Carl Urban.
Yeah, I love Carl Urban. Both of them are phenomenal actors. But I like Carl Urban because he plays Bones in the Star Trek series. Freaking love him. He is so spot on. It's not even funny. And we had a good, two guys in there, but it just washed, man. It didn't make the cut.
I think it was. I like the premise of the movie, even though it deviated from it did deviate from the game. But I think if they weren't trying to make it an action shooter movie and actually put depth to the story, it would have been a lot better.
Throw more into the project. Throw more into the background. It would have probably come out a lot better. I mean, it's okay to watch. It's a DVD rental for me at best, or free off the internet. But I'm glad I did not pay to go see that.
I think I actually bought it, but I bought it just to kind of.
Your girlfriend is attempting to reach you on your cell.
Yes.
Ooh, you in deep trouble now. What you doing on the phone?
But like I said, I'm one of those. Like, I think it was a pretty good idea. Like, the movie had a pretty good idea, but it wasn't a Doom. It wasn't.
It was. A lot of people who played the game had high expectations of translating that game into real life, And like I say, the only part that actually ever met that part of it was the very last, like 10 minutes or so. And from that was like, oh yeah, that's badass. Hot damn. You know, we get to see everything. And then that was it. Done. You know, movie over.
All right. Let me ask you this before we continue. And this is probably a really good question. How high should fans' expectations be for a movie that's being adapted from a video game?
See, that's a personal thing. As like you say, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but you know, put some effort into it because people are wanting to see that game they've played all this time now translated into live action, and they're going in knowing the story. It's like watching Warcraft. You know, Warcraft came out. Everybody, all the gaming nerds, freaking split their pants trying to go see that movie. And you know, you have to translate that game, that virtual world. It's been played for like 10 or 11. No, it's probably older than that now. Yeah. But all these years, all these upgrades, all this stuff, and it's such a vast world that you have to put it into something that, one, people who play the game can live with, and two, people who have never heard of Warcraft, which I think is rare, but you know, they don't know what the story is, that can get involved into a piece of the story, because there's so much into the Warcraft world. You know, I don't even play the game, and I like, you know, keep up with little bits and pieces here and there, you know, the major story arcs, but it's so vast, and the world, you know, the game, arcade game, video game is so vast. You know, taking that and translating it into, again, something that will be accepted. You know, for me, not really playing the game ever, seeing the visuals was great.
Yeah, I haven't played it either. I finally watched the movie,
and it wasn't a bad movie.
It could have been better,
but again, you know, this is where we come into that fan thing. If you have played the game, you probably would have been disappointed somewhat with the movie in some of the areas. Visually speaking, the game was very good. Like some of the worlds and the magic stuff and the orcs and all that were great.
Yeah.
You know, you had great visuals. Another example of that would be like watching Planet of the Apes remake.
Yeah.
The costuming, everything was freaking awesome, but the story sucked. Yeah. And I think that's what happened with Warcraft, is that for people who played the game, they could live with it. And the graphics and stuff got them along, and people who've never seen it went to go see it to experience that world. And
I think another thing about the Warcraft movie, I mean, I like the idea behind the movie and the premise and the visuals and all that, but I think one of the problems with the movie was they tried to make it sequel bait.
Oh, very.
Because a lot of stuff that happened in the movie, I'm like, y'all should have wrapped this up in one movie. And if it left off on a possible note, but because like what characters died in the movie,
separate stories. They could have even made like movie one would have been like Burning Earth or something, and you know, each of the releases that Warcraft has done, there's always this major story arc, and then you have smaller storylines in it, but they all combine into one story. I mean, one large picture. So
they should have honestly pulled the Lord of the Rings, made it a 3-hour movie. Made a 3-hour movie, put everything all in that movie, hit the points when it came to the plots and the subplots, and I would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
But certain characters died off in the movie. I'm like, wow, that was
quick.
I was like, wow, okay. And then
you're supposed to like die like somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm like, it was like 4. They left like 4 subplots open. And I was like, wow, that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, it was. I think they were trying to cram so much into it, and it was just overwhelming. It's just, you know, again, like the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. You know, they had there's actually 4 books to the trilogy, which is funny because you have the Hobbit, which happens long before we ever see the Return of the King.
Oh, the Hobbit was a beast.
And then you come, you know, and the Hobbit was 3 movies by itself. That's one book. And then you come back in and you have Fellowship of the Ring, Return of the King, and Fellowship of the Ring, 2 hours, and then the Return of the King. And each of those was freaking 3 hours long without extended cuts.
Yep.
Try watching those movies 3 times back to back. It's rough, man. I did it too in 3 different states. But anyway. But yeah, it's a lot of story to translate into the movie. And then the problem is that you have fans that, you know, if you were a fan of the Warcraft and you wanted to watch that movie, you go in with a pre-notion of seeing the movie, whereas somebody who's never seen it will walk in there with nothing. Like me and the Doom. I love the Doom. I went to see the Doom, and I was very disappointed with Doom.
I think it's always the problem is the people that's making a movie. It's always the problem of them trying to cater to the fans rather than actually make a good movie. And I think if you make a good movie, instead of completely trying to cater to fans, completely. Now, I'm not saying you don't, but as long as you take the source material and try to make a good movie, just a good movie itself, and not a good certain movie, like let me think of Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider might not have been the best movie.
Which one though?
The first one, because I ain't gonna lie, I like the first one.
I like the first one out of all of them the best.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, they did manage to make a good action movie with a good story, and it worked. And maybe like the fighting movies, Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and I'm like, if you make a good story, the movie will support it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it'll carry itself. But you also have to watch too is when you have people who, like the director for Warcraft, was actually a Warcraft player.
Mm-hmm.
He knew the stories, he knew the background. He didn't write the story necessarily, but he was familiar with the material. But then you get somebody in there who has no clue who's Warcraft, and they have to actually go and research and figure out who it is. Which movie do you want? Or one that's generated by, again, the guy who may not know the story lines from the game might make a better movie because he's looking more towards the story versus pleasing the fans.
Yes. I think that's it.
A diehard person who would be more wanting to, I want to satisfy my happy button. I want to see X, Y, and Z happen. I want to see the tower of whatever built. Something along those lines. And that may be one of the problems we ran into with Warcraft is it visually, again, very good, but
visually great movie. Substance.
It's weak.
Because like, think about it. Okay, it is one thing I noticed in the movie was the orcs were just set out to be the douchebags from the get-go. Instead of the story presented them as more of a sympathetic character. I mean, you see that their world got destroyed, but it's not like you actually was with them when it happened. You didn't see like these different families having to suffer, and then these orcs, I keep wanting to say ogres, these orcs being forced to do this, but it was like they were like bloodthirsty from like the jump. It was like,
but they were, there was a lot of story on them, but it was you had to really read into it. You had to really pay attention to all the little conversations that happen, because when you play the game, there is no family, there's no baby orcs. You're fighting a massive, 10-foot, 500, 600-pound behemoth with a warhammer who's going to smash you to the ground.
Yeah.
In the movie, they portrayed the behind the scenes of them and why they were coming in there. Their world had been destroyed because of the wizard and his green crap stuff that had ruined their world.
I would have liked. The only thing that got me liking the orcs and being sympathetic to the orcs at all was the main guy, the main orc, because he wasn't bloodthirsty like that. He
was willing to defend what he thought was. Originally, he was in the group as invasion and trying to save his race, basically, but then understood there was a price to pay for that.
Yeah.
And wasn't willing to truly sacrifice that price for his own, thing, and almost eventually ended up killing him anyway. But
you see what I'm saying? Like his family, it was really him that was like the face of them. Because when you think about it, there really wasn't any other orcs that stood out like that. Like, okay,
there was like 2, 3 at most, except for the girl.
Yeah, the half breed one.
Yeah, the half breed.
See that's what I mean. They should just, if you're going to make a movie based off a game, substance. Don't just, even with like the Resident Evil movies, and I love them, but they're crappy movies. There's a lot of
moments.
Like I could deal with the movies where they are. It just if the story was written better, it would have been gold. Because in some movies, some characters be in one movie, don't be in the next movie, be in the movie after that. No explanation.
Yeah, where the hell did it go? You know, why are they not staying with the story arc? You know, what they, you know,
the story isn't consistent. Because I just went and watched the last movie.
Yeah, that was. I hadn't seen that one, but I read about it through that one in a little week.
It's just like the other ones. It's entertaining. But it's just all of them are entertaining. It's just that they need to be tightened up. They're good ideas, but they need to be tightened. Like somebody that actually cares need to go back and re-edit
it. Yeah, you know what? We need to change that a little bit, or reshoot this, or every one of them. Yes. I mean, and you get your hokey ones too. I mean, you know, Street Fighter. To me, I really could never have taken as a serious movie anyway, because the video game is not really that serious. And so my expectation of that movie was not to be serious, and it was actually shot in a style of overkill and I don't want to say almost comical, but cartoony, even though it was live action.
All that stuff. Yes.
You know, we had Bison. You know, he's like getting in there, and hell, I can't remember all the characters. It's been so long, but I mean, but it was shot in a way. You know, just like watching a Mortal Kombat movie. You know, you can tie both of them together because it was all that same time frame. You know, Mortal Kombat. Yeah. Mortal Kombat was to me much more better in the very first one because
it was more grounded.
Yeah, it was very story based. You understood what was going on. You know, they had a few cartoony moments in there, but I mean, when you saw a lot of the characters, you're like, yeah, that's right, man. They're on the money. You know, it's working, and it worked for me.
Yeah, I see. I did like when I was a kid growing up. I didn't like the first one, and I liked the second one more. But now that I kind of went back, and I'm like, they both have elements that I like, and it's mostly the action. And I could see Mortal Kombat being possibly a trilogy, but it has to be written really well. It can't be just new characters come in fighting. Characters come in fighting.
Yeah, they have to. That story. I mean, that's the video game. Fight, win.
You have to make a good story
and a little subtle storyline that goes along with it. If you're going to turn that into a movie, you have to give it some more ooh la la factor.
I even went back and watched the Double Dragon movie, and I did not realize how bad that of a movie that was.
I sadly saw 5 minutes of it and just said, "I'm done."
I was literally crying.
I couldn't handle it.
And what was the girl off Charmed that was on there? Milano.
Melissa Milano.
Yeah, everybody loves her. And I was like, I love Melissa Milano. Watch that, and I felt like she cheated on me. I said, how could you do this to me?
Why would you do such a thing?
Do this? That movie, and I used to love the Super Mario movie when I was a kid, but of course, when I came up and I watched it again, now I didn't mind the people that they had possibly as the cast. Like I can't remember his name now. He played in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I liked him as Mario. Even Louis Goizamo. I can't remember. Oh, I'm terrible with names.
John Quazam. Like guy from Spawn, the clown.
Yeah, I honestly did not mind him as Luigi.
Have you seen him lately too? Have you? He was on just like the other day on some TV show, and I was like, "That's who." It didn't even look anything like him. I mean, what we probably remember him looking like. I honestly did not recognize him at all until they said his name. And I was like, "Holy crap, what happened?"
I think the last thing I've seen him, the last time I've ever seen him was in that one movie where he's with the one guy some movie where he's playing with that one guy from Breaking Bad that came out.
Oh yeah, in fact, I think that's one reason he was actually on there.
Yeah,
but he was like a show host or something.
I mean, let me ask you this. Okay, when we talking about game, what elements do you need to make a good video game? Like, what is the absolute necessity? Are you supposed to stick 100% to the source material, or are you supposed to do like a reboot, like a remake or a reboot? Like I always say, reboot.
If you have
remakes, yeah.
If we have the story content, see, and this is the problem though, you're going into something that somebody knows.
Mm-hmm.
And those somebodies are going to go see that movie because they want to see that video game transferred into real life. They want to see it on the big screen. And so you're going to have a large majority of the people to see that movie. You're going to need a good 60, 70% based on your storyline. And then 30% you can indulge, but for the most part, those people are looking for that 70%. Now, granted, the person who has never seen the movie and sees the visual, teaser or trailer or whatever the case is, that person could probably do with 30% of the storyline. You can carry the storyline throughout the movie and go, but again, this is where we come into that same discussion we had a few moments ago. Which is better, the person who knows it or the person who doesn't know it? What is your target? What are you trying? Who are you trying to please? That's the problem that you run into. If I'm making, in our next show, we're going to talk about movies that are translated into video games that are not out yet.
Yes.
I have a few I want to talk about in there because there's a few I've been wanting to see translated into movies and go, I want to see that. But
I want to ask you this too then. Which one's better, live action or animation, or it just depends on what the game is?
It depends on the game. And you have to and realization of that too. Like you're not going to have a live action Pokemon movie. It ain't happening. I don't foresee it. It would be too costly to do it, or you would have to limit. You could do we don't want to do the Star Wars EP 1 through 3 movie where it's all cartoony and CGI, but we want a good balance of CGI / practical, like Episode 7 would be great.
Well, how close to the if there was a Pokemon movie, how close to the Pokemon should it be more realistic, or should they try to balance realism with the cartoon when it comes to the animation?
You're going to end up like your close-up, your main characters are going to have to be pretty darn realistic, I think. I mean, granted, Team Rocket and Meowth and, a few of those. I don't want it to be me. If I saw that movie, a lot of the characters I would like to see up close, some type of practical creature would be great. That would really kind of enhance it. But then again, I think about it as like, in the mentality, have you ever seen a live action version? It would be very close to watching Roger Rabbit. You would have to do it like Roger Rabbit in order to really, with better technology. Granted, Roger Rabbit was a very groundbreaking movie for its time.
Yeah.
And now you have, talking 20 plus years since Roger Rabbit, and technology has greatly improved to sometimes you can't tell if a character's, real or not for the most part, especially like little ones. And being that you're talking Pokemon, I think Pokemon people who would go see the movie would be looking more towards an animated style of a character.
Yeah.
Or, somewhere thereof close, because that's what they would be expecting. And I don't know if I would probably actually go more towards an animated. I like practical better, but I would think, I'm just now sitting here thinking about, what if Pikachu and, I can't think of his name now.
Ash.
I had Ace in my head, but, if we saw a Pikachu in the movie with him, what would you expect to see? I don't want to see a Garfield type character, but, something a little more realistically tailored to the show. And he would be able to move and work better.
Yep.
But I mean, the whole style of the show is all animated anyway. That's all anyone's ever seen of them. So you'd have to play that one very close. Let's think of another good example, though. What would be out there that would be something like... well, Aliens all practical.
Okay.
How about like a Wing Commander? Here's one that actually kind of somewhat.
I still ain't seen that.
You have not seen Wing Commander?
That. Oh no!
Wow, there's some really cool parts to Wing. I mean, Wing Commander to me was a pseudo disappointment. However, again, there was a lot of cool stuff. The main antagonist of the movie is the Kilrathi. which are like 8-9 foot tall cat-like creatures.
Yeah.
That the humans are basically, fighting in this war, and they're only so briefly shown in the movie. But instead of, granted, we're talking 1999, 2000, so CGI was still not really kicking ass right then. But they showed the characters briefly. They always, they were always in the green mist of their atmosphere, or you would always see them from the side. And even though they did them in practical, it was cheesy practical, and it didn't do well. But the ships, the fighting, and all that was pretty like on par. I mean, it was good. But again, in this case, we had a practical application that just didn't go well. Again, they could have added a little bit better practical. Another good example would be what we see in, not that it's a video game adaptation, but Pacific Rim.
Yeah. Has
both practical and CGI of the same characters. And it's very difficult to tell sometimes when you don't have this, when you have one of the monsters is, like the old giant Godzilla movies, where you have a guy in body armor and a guy in a Godzilla suit. Old back then, you could tell it was rubber suit, but these new ones, for some of them scenes were pretty darn good, and the cuts are really good.
Yeah, you can't really tell.
And it's very difficult to tell when you have a practical, and very difficult to tell when you have a CGI character. So it was really well done, and the work that they did. I remember watching a documentary on just the water. When you see the water splashing up against the machines, how much effort went into that to make it as real as possible. And sometimes when the scale models were being used, in certain scenes. So it was very cool. So you can go one extreme, all CGI and cartoony. You can go, halfway into there, but to like Pacific Rim, or we can go all the way to like great visuals, but weak practicals, like in a Wing Commander. So
yeah. I was watching Ratchet and Clank because they came out with a movie.
Really?
The movie was actually pretty good. It was funny. It had a lot of Easter eggs. Like I was catching them. I was like, okay, that's good.
The chicken gun?
The who?
Did they have the chicken gun?
I don't think they did. Maybe they did. I'm not sure.
I remember when they did like this, when Sony was doing the commercials for the games upgrades and stuff, and they had like all these little kids out there with all the little weapons they use.
Yeah.
And the kid hits the button, goes, I don't think it's working. Then you see like this trailer rolling towards them. And then another one where he's like, the kid's got, he goes, I don't know if this thing works or not. And he hits the button and it turns all the people into chickens. The commercials for it are great. I mean, that wasn't even a movie. That was just, selling the game. And they put that much effort to it. It was awesome. So I would hope that the game would be on par with it.
I know one guy in the movie turned into a sheep. So I think somebody did shoot a gun at him and he turned into a sheep.
Yeah, I think that was in one of the video games. There was a chicken gun and some other stuff. That would be cool.
You see any of the Final Fantasy movies?
I have never seen any of the Final Fantasy movies. Although I know that the CGI in those games, or at least Final Fantasy with the Phantoms in it.
All of them, like the CGI is fantastic.
I remember they were talking about in Sports Illustrated, the main character in there, the female, they had her before the movie ever released. They had her in Sports Illustrated, talking about how awesome this woman was and everything like that. And they never she was actually animated.
Yeah, they talking about I think she made like one of the sexiest women in the world or something like that. I was like,
completely, totally animated. And that's some realistic number crunching processing power to do that.
All three of them. The Spirits Within doesn't take place in the typical canon of Final Fantasy because it's just a new idea itself. The Final Fantasy Advent Children is a sequel to the Final Fantasy VII game. And I just bought the Final Fantasy 15 movie, which is a prequel to the Final Fantasy 15. And the Final Fantasy Spirits Within was a good movie, had a good story. It was just a little bit too slow paced. The Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, it's one of those movies. If you play the game and you know the lore of the game, you will be a lot more. You'll be more into it. like you'll understand what's really going on.
Yeah, you see, some of them games get out there in those movies, and I was trying to think of the one that was out there right now. That, let me see if it's even mentioned there. It may not be on the list that I was going over to kind of help remind my brain of all the stories, but it was one of the kind of like a fighting style game, but it was live action mixed with CGI, and it was the movie looked good, and I was trying to keep up with the story. But if you had never played the game,
Yeah,
I had to go online. It's like, what the hell is this about? And I had
that's
to read it
that's
to
what I
completely
mean.
understand it. I mean, there was no, other stories have to carry the story for those who do not know about it. And there was like, I do not know about it. It was like pretty much assumption that you know this game and
Yes.
you're watching the movie, and that was it. There was no catching me up on anything.
And that's what I mean when producers, directors, whoever, writers, script writers, whatever you want to say, who make these movies have to balance that fine line with catering to the fans while also trying to tell a good story. Because if you could tell a good story, not only will you please your fans, but you can get other people on board. It's like if you make a good game, you can make a good game and cater to your fans, but also get other people interested in it.
Yeah, you want
But
something
if you
to
just
drag
make it
people
solely
in,
for your fans, but if you just make it solely for your fans,
then you're going to lose that percentage. I mean, and a lot of part of the movie, people who, again, I would say 70% of your audience that's going to go see that movie is a player or a fan of the story. I would actually probably say it's even higher than that. I would probably say 80% of the people who are going to see those movies are people who are familiar with or have somebody who's introduced them to it and whatever. So you're trying to get that extra 30% out of it, and you're not going to. In fact, you'll probably lose them, especially if you tell a story that has assumptions that you have watched or seen this before, or in some form or fashion, whether you read a book series that's tied to it, whether you read a manga or any of that stuff, it's going to just mess you up, and you're going to lose that group of people. But again, what are we writing for? It's kind of like speech writing. Know your audience. What are you trying to do? Tell them a story. What kind of story? One that they already know, or one that you want to just throw out there?
Yep. Have you seen any of the animated Resident Evil movies?
No.
They have like the graphics on point, man, and they're really good. They're a heck of a lot better than the actual.
Well, yeah, dare say, because you don't have anything. It's all animated, so you can do whatever you want. Even if they were CGI animated, it would probably be far better than the movies were. Even if they do it in manga style or something like that, would be great.
They got it in manga too.
Get out of here!
I'm serious. Have you seen the Angry Birds movie?
Yes, I have.
I really enjoyed it, although I would have liked to see more of the what you call it, the slingshot.
Yes, that was kind of a late introduction into the movie,
and it came by too quick.
Yeah, it was. I still enjoyed it though. I was like, because I was a big Angry Birds player. I love the bomb bird.
Yeah.
And I have a cup and a keychain, all kinds of stuff for the Bombird. But I was happy to see the movie because I wanted to see how they translated the characters from the game into the movie, and I think they did pretty darn good.
Yeah, they did a really good job.
I think everybody went well. The Yellowbird, speedy, fast, hyper. Bombird, gets mad and blows up. Angry Bird, the red bird, gets mad and goes crazy. And the eagle was my favorite. Because they had all hyped him up the whole time, and it turns out, he's like, what? Sing the song, boys. I forgot how it sounds.
See, and that's another example. You wouldn't think you could make a actual story out of that. What happened? They made a good story, and it was actually a good story.
It was a good story. It was well done. It was well executed. And in fact, like say in the game, you never really see the big great eagle is like a blur on the screen when you hit the magic button, and it's just something real quick. They never give you the backstory of the eagle. In this case, you got creative and they gave the story of the back eagle or the big eagle. Yeah. And he was a freak and complete slob, He let himself go and didn't care anymore. And, it was pretty good though. I liked how they kind of sidelined the great eagle there, and he made them rely on themselves more, which was a great lesson out of the thing. Don't rely on one person to do your stuff for you. Go take care of it yourself.
And they went ham too.
and it was good. I loved it. I was very happy. And next hour we'll talk about what's coming with those guys.
I wonder, have you ever seen Silent Hill?
Yes, I have.
The first one, I love it.
That gave me the willies.
The second one, I was really disappointed.
I really never played the game, so I'm one of those people who walked into the store.
Yeah, I haven't played it
What the
either.
hell?
I haven't played the games either.
So my son is the big guy who likes playing those, and he was kind of hanging around when I was doing it. And he was trying to explain some of it, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have to go read this because I'm a little lost. Who the hell is this big dude with the thing on his head and with a big ass sword and chopping at people and what the hell is this going on and why are they what's going on? I don't understand it, and that's where movie execution, written for fans of the movie. That's that movie was literally written for them, because I had never played the games and was totally lost in that whole series. I didn't understand what was going on. So
yeah, I like the movie because it doesn't tell this big adventurous story. It does tell a good story, a very personal story.
Yes.
And you feel sorry for the character, the main character who has to go through all of this to try to save her daughter and everything that's going on around her. Like, and that's why I liked it. And it kept me engaged. It was like creepy. It was suspenseful. The monsters didn't feel like forced into it.
No, they felt very natural. And the movie was very, very natural. If I had read it maybe beforehand of understanding what's going on, the movie would have made more sense. Especially the second one. The second one was like, what? But again, having to read it
better.
But I think
so sorry for Sean Bean.
It wasn't too bad of a movie. I just, in this case, it was written for those who were fans, and that's our whole topic earlier. What are you targeting? And decent everything in it, but I was lost. The
only thing I liked about the second movie, the only scene was the scene with the mannequin.
I'm trying to remember that.
Where the mannequin monster thing was made out of a bunch of mannequins.
Oh yeah, okay, I'm with you.
That was like the only scene I liked in it. And I'm like looking at the girl who's possessed. I mean, it showed like her dark side or whatever. And I looked at, I'm like, she's not dark. She looked like one of those gothic chicks. She had black lipstick on and stuff. I'm like, why do you have black lipstick on if you're... I'm not gonna understand you being dark, like you're the dark version of you, but you're wearing black lipstick. I'm like, you look more gothic than you do like demonic.
Yeah, you're not hitting the magic button here, people. Yeah, Revelation.
But I didn't like Revelations, but the first Silent Hill I did like.
Yeah, the first Silent Hill was creeping me out. I was like, what?
And this is one thing I want to talk about when it comes to video games, with fighting video games. If you're going to make characters based off of video games where it's it involves just like strictly fighting, it should not be where their costumes look exactly like they do in the game, because it doesn't look right. That's what was one of the problems that was in the Street Fighter. In the Street Fighter movie, did you see the outfits? I was like, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, but again, remember how that film was tailored. It was still cartoony, even though it was live action. So, it's like Superhero High. I think this is the movie, or Super High, or whatever it is, where, everybody's the kids of the superheroes.
Yeah.
And they all have their costumes, and to me, they seem over the top, but they were big at the time when they were heroes, and now they've gone into pseudo retirement. Same thing with that video game translated. They wanted it to be more like the game than a separate service. So I can understand the costuming being like in the game, instead of like watching G.I. Joe Retaliation, where you see General Hawk, it doesn't look like General Hawk. It doesn't quite fit the bill, or Star Shadow looked right. A lot of the characters did, but Scarlet Lady in there, she didn't have that weird one-piece blue suit on. She was wearing something completely different. So, but you knew who the character was by her hair and what she carried. So it can go along those same lines too. But I think when they were tailoring that video game to the movie, and the movie just copied the game to keep that style from the game into the movie as well. So it can work both ways. I mean, you can go overboard, Scooby-Doo, prime example.
Mm-hmm.
Some
of the outfits, some of their outfits. Okay, some of the outfits kind of hit the mark, and sometimes it didn't. And I was like, like I said, I'm not against them doing it, but it makes more sense when it looks more realistic. Like, if how Ryu's outfit is, he's just wears that same outfit.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, it wouldn't make sense for that dude to wear that same type outfit. Say if he's in the cold, if he's out there on the beach or something.
Yes.
Like, he would only wear that.
I will agree with you on that. I will totally agree with you on that.
He would only wear that outfit if he's like training or in an actual fight that he's preparing for.
Yes.
See, like something like that.
Yeah, that makes more sense in the conversation than because it wasn't always fighting in the thing. They were transporting themselves around and stuff. They're not going to wear that. Realistically, when it's time to be the super match or the muhaha bad reveal of the hour or something, I could see them wearing that. Costumes. Otherwise, no, we won't see them.
Kind of same thing with Mortal Kombat. And I think Mortal Kombat again did a little bit better execution with it.
Yeah, because they did have different clothing and different styles, even though it still reflected, the color scheme perhaps, but the style of clothing was always different. They didn't wear their typical fighting.
It wasn't 100%.
Yeah, they were.
It wasn't 100%.
That color scheme stayed, and just like in Scooby-Doo, Velma didn't always wear the orange and red skirt, orange sweater and a red skirt. She always had something that was kind of orangey or something that was kind of red, that stayed in her color scheme of the character, but never stood out as, she didn't wear the whole thing out, throughout the whole show. So, yes.
And that's why I liked Liu Kang's character. That's what he wore. I mean, it looked more realistic what he wore than it would in a video game. If he was getting into a fight and he put that stuff on, fine. Even with, and this, I'm kind of on the fence about Smoke and Cyrax from the movie, because I like the fact that it does look like the game, and for it to be 100% like the game that it was, it looks good, but it's still you know what I'm saying? It's like, it looks like the game and it actually looks good, but it still looks ridiculous.
Yeah. There is some loss in translation there sometimes. But
it's still pretty good though. I still like.
It was entertaining. It caught my attention. I didn't look at my watch. The movies I hate when I go to is when I start checking the time.
Mm-hmm.
If a movie doesn't involve me that much and I start looking at it, it starts moving down in the point value real quick. If I start looking at my watch or looking at my phone to see what time it is, it's pretty much a done movie for me.
I was watching House of the Dead, and have you seen it?
No.
Yeah, these kids it's based off. It's like Resident Evil mixed with Silent Hill.
Oh, how weird!
Basically, and the movie was crap. All it was just the only good part of the movie is where they was having these people were trying the survivors on this island were getting overrun by zombies. And these zombies moved and ran and used weapons and stuff. They actually were trying to get to this house, and they had to fight these zombies. And it was just this weird, pretty cool, actually, this really awesome like shootout sequence between these people and these zombies. And they were doing like they had really good cinematography. Like somebody would shoot, right? And the camera would either pause or it would slow down, and then the camera would pan around them and to like the other side or something.
Yeah,
and complete the shot what was going on. Yeah, it was pretty good. That was pretty good, but it was still really crappy movie. Oh snaps! We coming up on that time.
Yep.
About to go ahead and jump into the second half of this. Guys, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe, and come join us in the second half where we're gonna be talking about the upcoming video game movies that are coming out either this year, next year, and what we would like to see. So we'll see you in a few seconds.